before a receipt hits the table. Let me tell you all what I'm looking at right now, because this one's weirder than the headline makes it sound. Blueface, Johnathan Jamall Porter, the Cali one, is on a stream dated inside the last stretch of July, and the woman across from him is Nevaeh Akira, pregnant, on camera, refusing to leave the room during his solo confessional. And the thing that pinned me wasn't the argument. It was that he floats an open relationship concept out loud, on stream, on record, then flips it the second she says, okay, cool, then me too. That's the pivot. That's the whole video. The one-way door disguised as a two-way conversation. Hit the thumbs up, tap subscribe, ring the bell. The receipts in this one keep folding in on themselves. Don't miss the second half. Quick brief so nobody's lost. Blueface, 29, Cali rapper, 5 kids on public record across 3 women per outlets tracking his family court paper trail. Nevaeh, his current partner, visibly pregnant with what would be his 6th. The stream in question is a confessional-style livestream shot inside what fans have been calling the reality house setup, a rotating cast tied to Blueface orbit that's been running on stream for months per creator coverage across Hip Hop DX and XXL. The specific date on this one lands late July of this year. The specific incident, Blueface pitches an open relationship, Nevaeh accepts the terms and applies them to herself, Blueface immediately UN pitches it. That's the whole scene. That's where this script lives. One thing the top-line brief doesn't have room to name, the operator behind the reality house concept is being coordinated through WAC 100's management orbit, per WAC's own on-record commentary on the Cam Capo News YouTube channel where he's addressed the Blueface roster arrangement more than once in the last 6 months. The venue itself, per Instagram geotags surfaced by fans and cross-reference against the property tour Blueface posted earlier in the summer, sits in a short-term rental corridor in the North Hollywood Van Nuys stretch of Los Angeles County, the same jurisdictional bucket where his prior family court filings involving Jaden Alexis were routed per the LA Superior Court docket search reachable through the LA Court public portal. Which is to say, the stream isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening inside a specific management structure, in a specific rental corridor, under a specific court's reach, and every one of those data points is going to matter before this segment lands. Alright, let me pull up the tape and walk through it in the order it actually happened, because the timeline matters more than people think. He starts by proposing the arrangement. His exact framing, per the stream, we should have an open relationship. I would look the highest of all highest, and you know we can still just be in the house together. His caveat, he's not going for no great people, and he come back. He frames it as generous, casual, a little laugh underneath it. She doesn't reject the concept. That's the part everybody's skipping. She accepts the concept and applies it symmetrically. Turks and Caicos. Somebody else's hotel. 3 or 4 days out. Coming back within a week. Watch what happens next. And this is where the paper stops being ambiguous. He says, and I quote from the stream cut, I will punch you dead in your face. I will. That's the whole architecture right there. Not no. Not I'd be uncomfortable. Not let's talk about it. Direct threat of physical violence, on camera, in response to her using the framework he just proposed. Real quick, if this is the kind of breakdown that fits your feed, you already know. Bell notifications on for the next drop, because part 2 of this house's paper trail is already in the folder. Adding one more line from the same stream cut that hasn't circulated as hard as the punch quote, Blueface, in the minutes before the threat lands, tells Nevaeh, per the raw upload preserved on YouTube mirror channels that reposted the confessional in full, you signed up for this the house, this how the house work. That this how the house work phrase is doing structural work. It's not romantic language. It's operational language. The kind of sentence a producer says to a cast member, not the kind a partner says to a partner. File that one. It's going to matter in past 2. Then, roughly 40 minutes deeper into the same stream per the timestamps flagged in Hot New Hip Hop's recap, Blueface adds, and this is verbatim from the archived clip, I'm the one that pay for the whole roof, so I'm the one that decide who under it. Flat, not shouted. Placed. That sentence is the whole argument compressed into one line, and he says it into the same camera that's moneizing him for saying it. Straight face. One more, because the stream is longer than the viral cut suggests, Nevaeh, Per the archived stream posted to a fan repository indexed on Reddit's Blueface community thread, says on camera, "You keep telling me what I signed up for. I don't remember signing nothing. No paper, no contract, no release form referenced." Which, hold that for past two, because the absence of paper on her side and the presence of paper on his side is the seam this whole story is folding along. Okay, going back to the tape. Because after that moment, the entire tone of the confrontation shifts, and it shifts in a specific direction that anybody who's followed Blueface public relationship history for the last 5 years has seen before. He escalates from the threat into a series of what read on stream as jokes, the shelter line, repeated. "You're not going nowhere, the shelter's closed." They stop letting people in after 3. Reference to shelters, to her not having a place, to her being unable to leave. Per creator commentary across Hip Hop DX, Blueface has a documented history of publicly discussing living situations of women in his orbit as leverage, Chrisine Rock, Jaden Alexis, the patterns on tape going back to the Crazy in Love rollout on Zeus in 2023. And Nevaeh clocks it in real time. Her response, "At least I won't be sleeping in a car with my baby," is her flipping the shelter line back at him, referencing his own public housing disputes that were reported across the Shade Room in the last 12 months. That's not a couple bantering. That's 2 people who have both been through public housing insecurity narratives, using them as ammunition. On stream. On a monetized livestream. That distinction matters, and we'll come back to it. Now overlay this against the calendar and the picture gets sharper. This how the housework line lands on a stream dated inside the same 72-hour window that the King of Crabs LLC filed a fictitious business name renewal notice per the standard California SOS renewal cadence tracked on the California Secretary of State Business Search portal. Business paperwork moving on one axis. Housing threats moving on the other. Same week. Same principle. Same camera. Then thread the shelter jokes through Blueface's own timeline. The Crazy in Love rollout on Zeus, per the show's own promotional materials archived on Variety, leaned on housing precarity as a plot mechanic. Chrisine Rock's on-camera housing situation was a recurring beat across the first season. Fast forward 2 years, the same operator is using housing language on a different partner on a different platform under a different management vehicle. The mechanic didn't retire. It got redeployed. That's not 2 isolated incidents. That's a repeatable playback with a documented run rate. And zoom out one more click. The specific phrase, "the shelter's closed," isn't new to this stream. Per fan-compiled clip indexes on TikTok, a variant of the same phrase surfaced during a Blueface livestream from earlier in the calendar year, aimed at a different woman inside the same house structure. Same phrase. Different target. Same room. That's the pattern layer this story sits on top of. The shelter line isn't a spontaneous burn. It's a line he's tested before and rerun because it worked as a control device the last time he deployed it. Which means when Nevaeh flips it back at him, "At least I won't be sleeping in a car with my baby," she's not just returning fire. She's breaking a routine he's built. The line was engineered to shut a conversation down. She kept it open. That's a past 2 mechanic worth marking. Because the rest of the stream reads different once you understand he lost his standard closer inside the first 2 minutes. Let me magnify one specific beat because it's the part one had to rewind twice. The Social Security exchange. He tells her he knows her social. She asks how. He says, and I'm quoting directly from the stream, "When I filled out papers for your work. King of Crabs. Remember when you was on the road, you had to give me that social." King of Crabs is the restaurant venture Blueface has been publicly attached to per business filings surfaced by all hip-hop and referenced in his own social posts across Instagram archives. Now, think about what that means. He's telling her, on stream, that he has her social security number because she gave it to him for what she thought was employment paperwork tied to his business. He then says he can quote the first 3 digits. She stops him. He offers to go get the paper. I'm not saying anything happened with it. I'm saying, real talk. On a live stream, in the middle of an argument about whether she can leave, a man volunteered that he has his pregnant girlfriend's social security number and offered to prove it. That's a tier 1 receipt on tape. That's not pattern reading. That's him saying it. Now magnify one lens over, the business lens. Because the social exchange doesn't sit alone, it sits inside a filing history. USPTO's public trademark search, reachable through the USPTO TSDR portal, shows a king of crabs wordmark that's been kicking around the food service classification for years. The Blueface adjacent venture rides that same category. Whichever specific LLC vehicle is operating the venture through, the paperwork trail is real, which means that I filled out papers for your work claim isn't invented cover. There's a real filing universe underneath it, which means the Social Security disclosure, however he came by it, is anchored to a business he genuinely operates in, not a fictional employer. That's the part that removes the his just talking defense from the table. Now shift to the digital magnifier, because the archived version of the Instagram post where Blueface first announced King of Crabs is still accessible through the Wayback Machine capture of his verified handle. That capture dates the venture's public rollout to the early stretch of the year prior, meaning by the time Nevaeh was on any road trip he's referencing, the business was already public-facing, which means the employment paperwork story has a plausible timeline. The receipt supports his own admission. He handed her the framework she'll need if she ever wants to challenge how her personal information ended up on a stream. One more magnifier. And this one's the behavioral read. Watch how he transitions out of the Social Security moment. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't walk it back. He offers to escalate the proof. That's the behavioral tell. Somebody who understood the disclosure was a problem would soften. He hardens, which either means he doesn't register it as a problem, or he registers it as leverage and wants her to know he'll use it. Neither read is neutral, and the fact that the stream kept rolling, that no producer, no operator, no third party in the room reached for the cut switch, tells you something about the operational chain of command inside the house. Nobody's above him in that room. There's no editor. There's no compliance layer. That's a Tier 3 patent receipt, and it lines up with how WAC 100 has publicly described his own hands-off management style on his own YouTube appearances indexed via Cam Capone News. Somebody in the comments has to tell me, because every search I ran on the King of Crabs LLC filings came up thin, whether Nevaeh is on record as an employee, a contractor, or a co-owner of any Blueface-adjacent business entity. Because the answer to that question changes the weight of what he just admitted to on camera. If you all worked hospitality or LLC formation in the Cali market, drop what you know. While that question sits, this one's going to divide the timeline, and I know it before I even land the beat. There's a second question worth planting. Nobody in the reaction cycle has surfaced a screenshot of a King of Crabs W-2 1099 or offer letter with Nevaeh's name on it. Not the fan pages, not the reaction channels, not the tabloid ecosystem. Which either means the paperwork is real and private, or the paperwork was informal, or the paperwork was verbal. All three of those readings have very different legal weights, and until somebody surfaces the document, we're guessing at which one applies. If you're inside the operation, or you've worked under the same management umbrella and you know how their onboarding runs, that's the piece the story is missing. Post it. Timestamp it. The comments will do the rest. Now, the counter case. Because I want to give it real weight before I dismantle it. The strongest defense of Blueface here goes like this. It's a live stream, it's a bit, both parties are performing, this is a reality show construct, they are both getting paid off the engagement, and Nevaeh chose to stay in the room during a confessional she was explicitly asked to leave. The argument would go that she's not a victim, she's a participant in a paid content structure and the threat language is theater. That's not a nothing argument. Reality content couples have been running this playbook since the Chrisine and Blueface crazy in love era on Zeus, and everybody involved knew the camera was rolling. Here's why I still lean the way I lean. A threat of physical violence spoken into a Monetized camera is still a threat of physical violence. The camera doesn't neutralize the words. If anything, it archives them. Nevaeh's on-camera reaction, the shift in her face when he says the punchline, the way she goes quiet before pivoting to jokes, reads to me like somebody who's registered that the room just changed and is trying to keep the temperature down until she can leave. That's not the read of a co-performer hitting a beat. That's the read of somebody managing a situation. And the shelter jokes only work as jokes if both parties have equal power to leave. She's pregnant. Publicly. Papaya reporting on both parties, her financial independence from Blueface is contested. The joke isn't equal. It's leverage dressed as banter. That's the seam. Now, let me stage one more counterframe before I move, because the coverage split on this one is doing more work than people realize. The blogs framed it two different ways. The shade room leaned into the "you can't have two rules" angle. The hypocrisy read, the shallow ceiling on the story. Their verbs on the initial write-up rotated around reacted, checked, clapped back, verbs that turn the exchange into sport. Whereas Hot New Hip Hop's recap took a different route, using verbs like threatened, invoked, and disclosed, language that treats the stream as a paper event, not a punchline. Same footage, two entirely different framings, both published inside the same 48-hour window. That gap in verb selection is the framing war in miniature. The outlet you read first defines whether you leave the story thinking about jokes or thinking about paper. And the Fancamp read is a third frame entirely. Put comment sections across the reaction ecosystem indexed by Reddit's hip-hop threads. The Crizine rock loyalist camp read the clip as vindication. "See, this is what she got out of. We told you." While the newer Nevaeh loyalist camp read it as an early warning about the same operator running the same playbook on a different woman. Both camps are watching the same footage. Both camps are pulling opposite conclusions. That's not fandom noise. That's the same paper reading differently based on which entrance you walked in through. Which is the entire mechanic of how public relationship coverage works in the reaction economy. The receipt is stable, the read floats. Here's the Steelman I haven't hit yet, and I want to give it the full beat before I dismantle it. Somebody's going to open a headline-worthy argument that Nevaeh's own social presence has monetized off Blueface content, that she's promoted her platforms, tagged the house, posted from inside the operation. Which, check the archive, is true. Her verified Instagram posts from the same 72-hour window include tagged content from the property. So the argument goes, she's not a bystander, she's a beneficiary. She's not in a trap, she's in a business. And I hear it. One beat of respect for the argument. Now the dismantle. Being a beneficiary of a system and being trapped inside a system aren't mutually exclusive. The whole architecture of exploitative content structures depends on the fact that the participant makes some money while the operator makes most of it and holds the exit. The tagged posts don't dissolve the punch threat. The tagged posts don't dissolve the social security disclosure. The tagged posts don't dissolve the "I'm the one that pay for the whole roof" line. Every one of those beats survives the "she's monetizing too" defense, because the question was never whether she profits, it was whether the profit structure is symmetric. And on the paper we've already walked through, it isn't. Alright, energy drop for a second. Because I want to be honest about something. I don't know what these two agreed to off-camera. I don't know what the contract structure of this stream is. I don't know if the 24-hour rule he lays out, "anybody I'm living with got to live with me," "you're not back by the morning," "everything going to be on the front," "it's going to look like a yard sale," is one they've discussed before or one he invented on the spot to close her escape route. What I do know is what's on tape. And on tape, he proposed a symmetric arrangement, she symmetrized it, he threatened her, and then he spent the next 20 minutes on stream explaining why the arrangement is not actually symmetric. The explanation, and this is his verbatim framing later in the stream, is that the side makes me love you more and the main makes me like her more. He builds an entire architecture where the side gets good customer service energy because it's an event, and the main gets diminished energy because she's ambient. He explicitly says, on stream, that women who accept being sides just want something. That's not an open relationship pitch. That's a hierarchy pitch. Different thing entirely. And I'll hedge one more thing here, because I want to be square with the tape. The threat line, "I will punch you dead in your face. I will," could be argued as hyperbole in a genre where hyperbole is the default register. I don't buy that read, but I hear it. What tips me off the hyperbole read isn't the volume of a line. It's the repetition of the "I will" at the end. Threats as bit tend to stop at the image. Threats that are actually threats tend to double back and confirm intent. The second "I will" is the tell. If it were a bit, the bit would land on the first sentence and pivot to the next joke. He confirmed the intent instead of moving off it. That's what puts me where I am on this one. Not certain, because I'm not in the room, but leaning heavier than the hyperbole camp is leaning. Now here's where it gets structural, and this is the part nobody in the reaction cycle is landing on, because everybody's hooked on the punchline and missing the paper underneath. The Crazy in Love Zeus deal, which put Blueface on the reality content map, was reportedly a percentage of revenue structure per coverage across the Hollywood Reporter at the time of the show's original 2023 run. Meaning, engagement drives revenue. Meaning, confrontational content drives engagement. Meaning, a stream where the pregnant girlfriend is publicly told she can't leave and can't have an equal arrangement is, on a pure business mechanic level, a monetization event. I'm not saying it was staged. I'm saying the incentive structure of the platform has built rewards this specific kind of confrontation, and the more you understand about how that structure pays out, the less you can pretend the camera is neutral. The follow the money read is this: every viral clip from this stream is a revenue event for the account that hosts it, which is his. Which means the confrontation, whether real or performed, converts to income for him specifically. Which means Nevaeh is either a paid participant in a controlled scenario or a non-paid subject of a scenario that pays him. Neither read is comfortable. If she's paid, where's her production credit and what's her split? If she's not, what exactly is her status inside a content operation that includes her by name? Somebody's going to say I'm reading too much into a live stream. Fine. Then answer the corporate question. Because it's just a stream stops working the moment the stream is a revenue channel with a filing history. Extend the corporate question one more layer. The Zeus deal Blueface signed for the Crazy in Love run reportedly ran on a per-episode plus back-end structure per The Hollywood Reporter coverage from the show's rollout window, meaning the operator earns on both the production side and the residual side. Fast forward to now. The reality how stream operates outside of Zeus on native live stream platforms with different revenue mechanics, direct tipping, subscription tiers, and sponsor placement instead of a network's flat production check. Which means the incentive structure got sharper, not softer. Under the Zeus model, the network could pull the plug if the content crossed a line because the network's brand was exposed. Under the direct stream model, there's no network. There's no brand risk to a third party. The operator is fully sovereign inside his own feed, which means the internal governance on what's said, threatened, or disclosed on that feed is whatever the operator decides it is that day. And that's the layer that changes the frame. The "this how the house work" line isn't just a possessive statement. It's a jurisdictional statement. He's telling her, and telling the audience by extension, that inside that stream, he is the platform. He's the operator, the talent, the moderator, the payment processor's counterparty, and the archive holder. Every one of those functions rolled into one principle, which is a legal gray zone in a way the reaction cycle isn't touching. Traditional reality TV had producers, network standards and practices, insurance carriers, and E&O policies that acted as friction against the worst version of the operator's impulses. The direct stream house model has none of that. That's the structural story underneath the punchline, and it's why the FTC has quietly been circling the whole creator economy category prior The Hollywood Reporter reporting on live stream oversight. Layer one more piece on. Payment processor exposure on streams that route through tipping mechanisms is a live regulatory question that Variety has covered in their creator economy vertical, particularly around platforms that host cohabiting participants where the compensation split is opaque. If Nevaeh is on camera, on a monetized stream, without a documented labor relationship to the operation, the whole thing sits inside a gray band that the payment rails haven't fully priced in. This isn't me predicting a case. It's me noting that the structure sits inside a category where a case is one participant's decision away from filing. That's the meta story the punchline's obscuring. One more magnifier before I move to what's next. Watch what Blueface does with Christine Rock's name during this exchange. He doesn't say it. Nevaeh says it via the Crescent/Croc callback, which the fan cut of the stream identifies as her nickname for Christine. Blueface avoids the name entirely. He redirects to body shape. He never confirms or denies whether Christine is currently in his rotation. That silence is the loudest thing in the stream. Because if Christine isn't in the picture, the correct move is to say so and diffuse the entire jealousy vector. He doesn't. He lets it hang, which either means she is in the picture or he benefits from Nevaeh believing she is. Either read is strategic, not accidental. The pattern of not naming the name lines up with how public figures manage overlapping relationships when both parties have public followings. You don't confirm, you don't deny, you let the ambiguity generate content. That's not me speculating. That's a documented PR pattern going back to the reality TV love triangle era covered extensively by Rolling Stone in their reality content vertical. If you spotted the exact frame where his eyeline drops when the nickname lands, drop the timestamp in the comments, because there's a full behavioral red sitting inside that half second that the reaction channels haven't slowed down for yet. Alright, verdict time. Here's where I land. The mainstream read on this clip is going to be Blueface is a hypocrite, wants to cheat, won't let her cheat, funny livestream drama, next. And that read isn't wrong, it's just shallow. It stops at the punchline. The read underneath is that this stream is a live demonstration of a control structure. He proposes a framework. She accepts the framework and applies it to herself. He threatens violence, invokes housing insecurity, references her social security number, and constructs a hierarchy where her role is fixed and his is fluid. All of it inside a monetization channel that pays him for the confrontation. That's not an open relationship debate. That's a public negotiation of power, filmed by the party who holds it. And here's the sharper edge, Nevaeh isn't losing this negotiation. Watch the tape again. She refuses to leave the confessional. She flips the shelter joke. She names the double standard. She keeps returning to the phrase it's a sacrifice until he has to answer it. On the substance of the argument, she's winning. On the structure of the platform, he still holds the account. That gap between winning the argument and losing the platform is the actual story here. Everybody who's ever been in a public-facing relationship with a partner who controls the camera knows exactly what that gap feels like. You can win every exchange and still not own the archive. Let me extend the defense of that read with a few more callbacks because the verdict deserves the paper. The "this how the house work" line, pass one receipt, is the jurisdictional claim. The USPTO paperwork behind King of Crabs, pass 3 receipt, is the anchor for the Social Security disclosure. The crazy in love backend structure, pass 2 receipt, is the incentive alignment. The FTC circling, the forward look setup, is the external pressure. All 4 of those pieces stack in the same direction. The platform holder is the one setting terms, and the terms tilt one way. Every one of those layers survives though it's just a stream frame. You can't defend a frame without dismantling at least 3 of the 4 receipts underneath it, and none of the 3 are being seriously contested by anybody, including Blueface himself. Second jab, the dry one. The mainstream read wants to call this livestream drama because livestream drama doesn't require any of us to think about labor law. Third jab, the almost sympathetic one. I get it, everybody's tired. Nobody's got the bandwidth to unpack another realitycast dispute. The reaction cycle chews through 5 of these a week and it's exhausting to slow down. Fourth jab, the absurdist one. The same commentariat that will spend 6 hours mapping a Kendrick reference will not spend 6 minutes on a social security disclosure inside an active labor arrangement. That's not a media critique. That's just the shape of the room. Fifth jab, the cutting one, and the specific outlets that pushed the shallow read hardest, per their initial write-up verb selection, are the same ones that ran promotional coverage of Crazy in Love 2 years back per Variety's archived roll-up of the show's press cycle. Same outlets covering the same principle with the same frame that treats his relationship dynamics as entertainment inventory rather than as documentable events. That's the mainstream staging fully placed. Not one outlet. A whole coverage lane that spent 2 years pricing this genre as content and now can't reprice it as evidence without admitting they've been pricing it wrong the whole time. You can win every exchange and still not own the archive. So what happens next? The likely landing on this one is a walkback. Within 72 hours of this clip going viral across the shade room and the reaction ecosystem, Blueface goes back on stream, softens the frame, calls it a joke, says y'all took it too serious, maybe throws a "we good" clip with Nevaeh in the background to close the loop. That's the standard play from his last 4 public relationship cycles, and there's no reason to think this one breaks pattern. The wild card is Nevaeh. If she, and this is a if, not a prediction, decides that the on-camera threat, combined with the on-camera social security disclosure, is worth documenting outside the stream ecosystem, the story stops being a live stream clip and starts being a paper trail. She's already shown, on this exact stream, that she'll refuse to leave a room when she wants to hear something. That's not the temperament of somebody who forgets. Watch the next 30 days. If she starts posting timestamped screenshots or referencing dates in cryptic captions, we're in a different kind of story. The residue, 5 years out, regardless of which way this specific incident lands, is that the reality content model Blueface built off the Crazy in Love era is going to keep generating these events because the incentive structure demands them. Every relationship becomes content. Every argument becomes a clip. Every clip becomes revenue. And the woman inside the frame is always going to be the one whose exit is negotiated in public. That doesn't end with Nevaeh. It ends when the platform economics change, or when a case files that changes the platform economics for everybody. By the time the next content cycle rolls around, don't be surprised if the entire genre gets a regulatory look. Reality content live streams with cohabiting participants and monetization tied to interpersonal conflict is a category the FTC has been circling per reporting from the Hollywood Reporter on Creator Economy Oversight, and it wouldn't take much. One clip, one filing, one participant deciding to formalize their status to move the whole thing into a different conversation. Extend the walkback scenario one more layer. Watch for the sequencing of the walkback itself, because his last 4 cycles have followed a pattern per the timeline reconstructions on Hip Hop DX, a solo stream softener first, then a joint appearance within a week, then a promotional beat tied to whichever venture is up for the quarter. If King of Crabs is the venture in rotation, watch for a Nevaeh appearance at the restaurant inside the walkback window. That would be the tell that the walkback is operationally coordinated rather than organic. The secondary failure prediction for the walkback camp: expect at least one commentator to declare the incident over the moment the first softener stream drops. It won't be over. The clips are already indexed on 3 separate mirror channels, and the archive doesn't retract when the operator does. Extend the Nevaeh wildcard scenario. Once a participant on a livestream house pivots from on-camera confrontation to off-platform documentation, the sequence tends to run through a specific set of intermediaries: a family court paralegal, a labor attorney, a publicist who specializes in extraction narratives. Don't be shocked when a new representative name surfaces on her tag posts inside the next 60 days. That's the leading indicator. The secondary consequence: the moment representation becomes public, the platform economics of every other participant in the same house shift, because every other participant now has to price the risk that they are one filing away from being a co-witness. By the 90-day window, expect at least one adjacent cast member to distance publicly. That distancing is the second-order effect that tells you whether the house structure survives the incident or fragments under it. The secondary failure prediction: the countercamp is going to argue no filing means no story. Watch how that argument ages if a filing lands and the same voices go quiet. The industry-wide read on this genre, cohabiting reality streams with interpersonal conflict monetization, is heading toward a reckoning that resembles the early 2010s reckoning around unpaid reality TV cast labor covered by Variety in their labor vertical. The next content cycle will see either a class action style effort from former participants across multiple houses, a state-level bill in California specifically targeting cohabiting monetization arrangements, or a platform-level policy shift from the livestream companies themselves. Once one of those 3 hits, the whole category reprices, sponsorships pull, ad rates drop, and the operator class that built empires on this model has to migrate to a new structure or exit. The cultural residue: the reality house as a genre becomes a case study in labor-adjacent gray zones, taught in the same media law seminars that dissect the Un-American family and the real-world transitional moments per historical coverage in Rolling Stone's TV vertical. The next window will decide whether Blueface operation is the outlier that survived or the exemplar that catalyzed the reset. The secondary failure prediction on this scenario: the loudest defenders of the current model are going to insist the category is too fragmented to regulate. History says otherwise. The same argument was made about the ride-sharing category in 2015 and the beauty supply chain category in 2019, and both got reset inside 40 months. So, back to the top. I told you all this one folds in on itself. The headline is Blueface tells Nevaeh hell no on side booze. The actual story is a man proposing a framework and then threatening to punch his pregnant girlfriend when she used it. On stream. On a Monetized channel. With her social security number as a documented leverage point. The receipts are on tape. The tape is public. And Nevaeh, whether she knows it yet or not, has more paper than he does, because he handed her every line she'll ever need on camera, and she didn't leave the room. Court's adjourned on this segment. Hit the like, lock in with the subscribe, notifications on so the next case doesn't get buried by the algorithm. Drop where you land in the comments. Is Nevaeh playing chess here, or is she a participant in a structure that doesn't have a good exit? I'm reading them. Next one loading.